When you look at some of the president's language, good people on both sides, et cetera, I've found it horrendous, and I'm not going to be one to try to justify it or defend it.
Congressman, thank you for talking with Yahoo News.
Call me Max, please.
Well, thank you, Max. Could you tell me about your experience growing up Jewish in New York City?
Yeah, when you grow up Jewish in New York City, you think everybody's Jewish. And then I went to school in Connecticut, and then I went to school in London, and again, in both circumstances, you think everyone's Jewish. And then I enlisted in the military. And I'm in basic training in Georgia. And for the first time, you are the first Jew that someone's met. It was only then you realize just how few Jews there are in the world. This is what has made this spike in anti-Semitism so horrifying, especially for people in my generation, because we never lived through this. It was this special moment in history. In retrospect, we only now realize how special it was when it seemed like, to some degree, anti-Semitism, at least in its most glaring forms, might be a thing of the past.
Who is responsible for the rise in anti-Semitism?
Well, that's just the thing, is that everyone's looking for one individual, one group. This runs the political spectrum. If someone tells me we don't have a problem on the left, I think they're lying, or they're ignorant, or they're naive. If someone says the same thing about the right, I also think they're lying, ignorant, or naive.
Some people say that President Trump has unleashed the forces of hate.
But I do think that if you begin this conversation and end it blaming the president's language, you actually don't do the severity of this problem any justice whatsoever. We have here in the United States the rise of extensive, highly coordinated domestic neo-Nazi organizations like Atomwaffen, organizations like the Base. Keep in mind, the Base is the literal translation of Al-Qaeda. They are terrorists through and through. We just haven't had the courage to label them as such, and it's significantly hampering our abilities to fight them.
Do you think there's a willingness in Congress to label domestic terrorists in the same way we label foreign terrorists?
I led a letter, along with 39 members of Congress, to Secretary Pompeo, urging the State Department to designate 3 neo-Nazi global organizations as foreign terrorist organizations. And the Secretary of State, he could have done it. It doesn't require a law to be passed. And the letter was abjectly ignored. And to date, not one Republican has signed on, although I remain sincerely hopeful that this will become a bipartisan issue. But once those entities and others are labeled as foreign terrorist organizations, we have a significant tool at our disposal to fight the rise of white nationalism and neo-Nazi organizations here in the United States.
You have been the victim of anti-Semitic online attacks, is that correct?
Sure.
I'm assuming that only started once you entered Congress.
Yeah, no one knew who the I was before I was a member of Congress.
Can you talk about what that's been like?
No matter what is said about me, online or to my face, no matter what, I'm not giving up this fight. I don't care what they do. I do not care what they say. This is a fight that we have got to take on. I don't care about politics when it comes to this issue. I don't care about politics.
And to that point, you've criticized Representative Omar for some of the things she has said, but now you're also working with her on the no Muslim ban.
Again, I do not care about politics when it comes to confronting hate. I do not care.
Do you worry about a larger, I'm not saying a 9/11 scale attack, but a larger type of attack?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think they have the capacity, the neo-Nazis?
Well, look, I'm not going to either discuss, what would be confidential or classified information, but there's no reason to believe that that we should not be addressing this threat with the same level of seriousness that we address the threat of jihadist terrorism. This rise of neo-Nazi organizations looks very similar, of what Al-Qaeda looked like in the 80s and early 90s. We've got to start talking about this, and we have to start talking about it and taking action before it is too late.